Sorry, good afternoon, and welcome to OBC Midweek News, coming from you live from Orpington Baptist Church from the two bald ministers. Phil Dial, youth pastor here, and Martin, senior minister here. Good haircut, mate.
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
You know, I went and sat in the barber's chair earlier in the week, and he laughed. He really laughed. And I said,
Why did he laugh?
Why are you laughing at? He said, "You've made a real mess of this, haven't you?" and then told me that he had to really cut it back to get rid of all the mistakes and start again, really. So
I'd imagine barbers have had that quite a lot over lockdown.
Yeah.
Don't take it personally, mate.
I talked to him, and he's had it a few times.
Stick to being a minister.
There we are.
Barber's not for you. In previous weeks, we've been joined by friends from our church family, which has been a real blessing. And today, we're going to be watching a video, aren't we, Martin? Can you tell us a bit about that? What's going on today?
Some friends will remember Patrick Regan, who is speaking on the video. Some friends will remember him when he was director of XLP, inner city London youth charity, and for his fantastic work with XLP, he was given an OBE by the Queen, and really good work. And then things happened in his life, and he gave up being director there and has started a new charity called Kintsugi Hope, which is all about mental and emotional health, and has spoken at Spring Harvest, has written a couple of books now about the same thing, on Kintsugi Hope, on mental and emotional health from a Christian perspective, but for everyone. And he's going to be sharing with us today. We're really looking forward to that. Actually, something he recorded first at Spring Harvest. And we're going to listen to him because we are so conscious, aren't we, Phil, of the mental and emotional health needs.
It's an understatement. We really are. And we're seeing it through our own lives, through friends and family throughout the church. This last year, but I think in particular, this last lockdown, the last few months, has really taken its toll. Me and Sarah heard from someone close to us how they've been blessed with a new addition to their family, and they've been affected just because their baby hasn't been able to see people, and they've just felt so isolated with their child on their own. And that's just one of a million different examples we could give as to how tough it has been for people. And I'm just so glad that there are charities, Christian charities, that want to speak up and teach us about it and help us try to deal with it. I think it's brilliant that we can include this with what we've got today.
And it's just a comment. It's people of all ages as well, isn't it? It's young people as well as older people.
Yeah.
So let's listen to Patrick Regan as he shares with us about the vision for Kintsugi Hope and some teaching on how we're to approach our mental, emotional health. Great to have Patrick Regan with us.
Hey, it's Patrick here from Kintsugi Hope. It's brilliant to be with you. A lot of people say to me, what on earth does the word kintsugi mean? Well, kintsugi is a Japanese word. It means golden joinery. I guess if we get a bowl and we break it, we tend to mend it with super glue. And the whole idea of super glue is you hide the cracks, right? You pretend it's not broken. What they do in Japan is they put a gold powder in the glue. So instead of hiding the cracks, they make a feature of the cracks. Arguably, the object becomes more beautiful than it was before. It certainly becomes more unique. Me and my wife Diane, 2 years ago, we started a charity, and we wanted to do something which tackled issues of mental health and isolation. And the way we did it is we did like a 12-step program, a bit like Alcoholics Anonymous, looking at well-being. And the whole idea is to look at issues around anger and self-acceptance and anxiety. And it was amazing. It just went all over the country. But of course, with the coronavirus, it's been tough. So what we've done is we've moved all our training onto Zoom. The wellbeing groups are all on Zoom. And I thought, is this really going to work? But actually, it has been incredible. And it's been a way that church can still reach out to its community. The topics are so relevant. So if you know churches that want to be trained, please get in contact with us. They can now do it online for the time being. The other thing we do is we give away some resources, and we're trying to do this at cost price because we don't want to make money out of anyone's tragedy. And I've done 2 books, Honesty Over Silence and When Faith Gets Shaken. Where is God when suffering happens? And this one is very much around emotional and mental health challenges. But today, I really want to talk to you about resilience, and because I think it's going to be really key for us in the coming days. And interesting that Alan Scott says this: the future doesn't belong to the brilliant, but to the resilient, not to those who avoid scars or pain, but to the wounded healers who give again. The verse I want to look at is probably the most misquoted verse in the whole of the Bible. It's Jeremiah 29 verse 11. You'll know what it is. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you hope and a future. And it's encouraging, isn't it? I think God's got good plans for us and that he wants good things for us. But what we do is we take this verse, like we often do, out of any sort of context. And then we just apply it to our lives. The context of this passage is incredible. The book of Jeremiah was written in the context of the Babylonian army that invaded and destroyed Jerusalem. And the people of God had been taken into exile by King Nebuchadnezzar. They had travelled several hundred miles of desert to live in a place where Yahweh wasn't known. There was no temple of God, no Levitical sacrifices, no festivals, no celebrations. They had to live by a different set of values. Put simply, they felt like aliens in a foreign land. In fact, the book of Lamentations describes the crushing sadness. The people felt abandoned, rootless, vulnerable, orphaned. I don't know at the moment who can feel a little bit like that. At the moment, for me, I've got a sister who's an NHS nurse, ITU nurse, and my mum's a hospice nurse, and my daughter's working in a care home. And it can feel a little bit vulnerable. I feel a bit like, all my coping mechanisms for anxiety and other issues that I've struggled with seem to have been taken away. Life isn't always going to plan. But here we have in Jeremiah 28, a prophet, Hananiah, prophesies that, it's going to be okay because we're going to be out of this. We're going to be out of this exile in 2 years. And the temple treasures that Nebuchadnezzar stolen, everything will be restored. And this was the prophecy that really the people were longing for. And Jeremiah would have been happy to see it fulfilled. But the problem was, it wasn't a word from God. And it was against this backdrop that Jeremiah wrote a letter to Jerusalem from the elders, the priests, the prophets, and all the people who had been exiled. And you see in Jeremiah, verse 10, it says that this exile is going to last 70 years, not 2 years. But it's not to be wasted. That what the people need to do is plant gardens, settle down, eat the food, marry, have children there. These were not easy words for the people in exile to realise. The verses say this: this is what the Lord God Almighty, the God of Israel, says to all I've carried out into exile from Jerusalem to Babylon. Build houses, settle down, plant gardens, eat what they produce, marry and have sons and daughters, find wives for your sons and daughters, give daughters in marriage so they may have sons and daughters. Increase in number there, do not decrease. Seek the prosperity, the peace and the prosperity of the city to which I've carried you into exile. Pray to the Lord for it, because if it prospers, you too will prosper. The first key here, which I think is so appropriate to us, is the people in exile had to accept that they were in a difficult position and they were going to be there for quite a long time. I've come to the conclusion that acceptance and resignation are two very different things. You cannot deal with what you first don't acknowledge. And to acknowledge something takes courage and vulnerability and humility. Archbishop Desmond Tutu, who challenged systems of injustice and poverty around the world, says this: we're meant to live in joy. This does not mean that life will be easy or painless. It means that we must turn our faces to the wind and accept that this is a storm we must pass through. We cannot succeed by denying what exists. The acceptance of reality is the only place from which change can begin. Acceptance is the first place of healing. We have to stop looking for the quick fix and commit ourselves to the long process. I remember when I was struggling with my mental health, I didn't want to accept it. I was embarrassed. I felt ashamed. And because I was a Christian, I was like, I should be okay. I ought to be able to cope. What's wrong with me? I've got a family to look after. I must pull myself together. I ought to be stronger. I should, I must, I ought. And I realised that I needed to accept that this is a struggle. And, you know, in today, of all the stuff that's going on with the coronavirus, we've got to accept that for many people, this is going to be difficult. And when we come out of this, I don't think we're going to be running into each other's arms. I think people are going to be scared. In China, the restaurants are empty. People are going to need to lament. It's going to be characteristics, will be memorial services. You know, funerals are so tiny. We're going to need to remember people properly. I believe, you know, and I don't want to be a prophet of doom, but there will be a tsunami of mental health issues coming. And that's why we're challenging the church. Get trained, get ready. We're going to need to be there, and we're going to need to understand emotional mental health like we've never understood it before. And that's why we're trying and challenge people to get involved in Kintsugi Hope and other amazing charities as well. We need to accept the fact it's okay not to be okay. We need to accept the fact it's okay to have limitations. Actually, limitations aren't always bad. Accept that life will never be perfect. We don't have to be all things to all people. We can have questions. Struggling doesn't mean you failed. It means you're a human being. You don't have to agree with.
I'm calling all faith-based entrepreneurs to rise up, Christian entrepreneurs to rise up. So what I wanted to do is invite you to our completely free business.
With everyone. Anxiety isn't weakness, and you are loved no matter what. Liz Carter has written a brilliant book on contentment, says this: Jeremiah didn't give false hope by promising that the future would be theirs for the taking right now in their lives. Instead, he advised them to comply with and participate in the situation. God was extending hope to those in this horrendous situation, but making a promise that life wouldn't be suddenly free of difficulty. He wasn't making that promise. Resilience is thriving in the midst of adversity. You rarely hear it preached about. Resilience is about how do we keep going. Martin Seligman found there were 3 P's that stunt our recovery when we're struggling with resilience. Number 1 is personalization, the belief that we're always at fault. And I guess I've always done that. I blame myself for everything. You know, I overwork. If my child's doing bad at school, it's my fault. If there's a problem at work, it's my fault. We put ourselves under huge amounts of pressure, particularly now. I think we have to lower our standards and actually cut ourselves some slack. It's really, really hard. Blaming yourself will delay recovery. Pervasiveness, there was the second P, the belief that an event will affect every area of our life. Now, to be honest, this is affecting pretty much every area of our life, but not every area of our life. We've still got friends. We've still got people that we can FaceTime and contact. Though some of our families are unwell, there's still family around, wider family. It's not every single area of our life, though it can feel like that sometimes. And then the other area, third P, is permanent. We tell ourselves things will never get better. I've stopped using the words never and always because they're absolute statements. You know, and we say absolute statements about ourselves. You know, my daughter has really got into hearing me talk quite a lot. And the other day she was making a complete mess in the kitchen. And, you know, it's chaos. And I was like, Abigail, you're such a mess. And she's like, Daddy, I'm not a mess. I happen to be making a mess. There's a big difference. And she's right. And, you know, the fact is we've got to go from a fixed mindset with rigid belief systems to a growth mindset. It was going to be 70 years, but it wasn't going to be wasted. And actually, Jeremiah 29 verse 11, the famous verse, is even more incredible because he is saying through the prophet Jeremiah, you will know what, in the midst of trouble, in the midst of feeling scared, in the midst of feeling orphaned, I have plans to prosper you and not to harm you, to give you a future and a hope. And then in Lamentations, there's this beautiful verse, Lamentations 3:22-24. It says this: because of the great love, the Lord's great love, we are not consumed, for his compassion never fails. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. I say to the Lord is my portion. Therefore, I will wait for him. You will not be consumed. Resilience is a bit like a muscle. Actually, muscles build when you rest them. They break a little bit. That's how a muscle builds. Do you know that? It breaks a little bit, you rest, and in that resting process, the muscle starts to build. And the fact is, we will get through this. Hope is saying nothing lasts forever. Everything passes. Some of you may have heard me on tour. You know that I've got a dog called Hope. And my wife bought it for me when I was going through a really tough time. You can imagine my poor neighbours. And the first 6 months when I was trying to train this thing, they'd hear me shout out at the top of my voice, "No, Hope!" Or once they heard me shout out, "Diane, I've lost Hope. I don't know where Hope is." And, sometimes things can feel hopeless. But, hope is this. It's saying everything passes, nothing lasts forever. We can learn so much from the people who are in exile and God's heart and God's passion for them. So whatever you're facing, whatever situation you're in, I pray that you just keep hold of that hope that you are loved, you are enough, you are special. May God bless you.
There we go. What a lovely video.
Yeah, it's really good to hear
Really
from
powerful video.
Patrick Regan. One of my words of lockdown, I was telling one of our doctors about it. I've used it so many times, is that word resilience. To keep going and to have hope all the way through this. But especially we wanted to say to friends out there that are listening, watching, we are a church that takes mental and emotional health very seriously. We're not just kind of thinking about people's souls or just acknowledging it. We want to be there for people, and we want to be there for one another.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one thing that I learned, I think we may have learned it in the first prayer course, Martin, that Pete Gregg said, sometimes Jesus doesn't take you out of a storm, he joins you in it. And I think that's quite true at the moment, because this storm is taking a long time to pass. Whatever storm it is you're in, whether it's due to the pandemic or financial issues or other mental health problems, but actually Jesus can join you there. He can help you, he can lead you through, and the great thing about storms is they finish. And that is so true with this one as well. And we're so conscious of people's frailty of their mind. We've felt it as well at times. And we're just desperate to completely reiterate again our need for communication and our openness to want to help people. And we've seen it with friends of the church. It's one thing Martin and myself saying here we want to help, and you may think, I don't want to phone Martin, I don't want to phone Phil, but there are so many other people in the church, and if you know them, pick up the phone and call them. Every single one of the people in this church want to help each other, and I think we've really seen that in the last year.
Yeah, that's right. And I think too that that one-to-one is really important, and prayer ministry for people and pastoral care. But also it shapes what we do as a church. So tonight, for instance, we got the prayer course 2 running, and it's specifically about unanswered prayer and kind of wrestling with things that we don't think have been resolved and don't seem to have been resolved for us. And so that's, into this area on Sunday in worship again, as we look to our God to give us strength and hope. It's the best thing we can do, actually. So whether you're here on Sunday, and there are 100 going to be here with us on Sunday, or watching online, please enter into worship and get something of God's perspective on your life as we worship Him.
I think we're all guilty at times, aren't we, of being a nation or a community to look at a bottle and think it's half empty. But when you look at all the good things that are going on, actually it's not just half full, but it's sometimes brimming and overflowing, because God's grace is so much in abundance. And
Yes.
we sometimes look at all the negatives, and sometimes the negative people, their voices are louder than the ones who are more positive. And we sometimes just have to remember that God is so good. He is
Yes.
really moving in this place, and we are so grateful for that.
And I think too that it's even for me as a minister, I think it's really important to go back to the fundamentals, to go back to the roots of our faith. And if I might say so, it's one of the reasons why we're running the Alpha course online from Thursday, the 13th of May, and we really hope that more will sign up for it. Speak to Phil or me, and we'd love
Please.
you to join that course. Growing numbers, which is exciting.
So
Another
exciting.
couple this morning actually
So excited.
said to me how much they're looking forward to being part
And
of
it
it.
is such a good course. If you think, because you've been a Christian for most of your life, that you won't get anything out of it, I challenge you to come along and tell me the same after. It is that good, because you actually get to listen to other people's perspectives. And if I may say, Martin, I think accountability is very key when it comes to our own decisions and our own mental health. And what I've learnt over the last few months, and this is the advice of Spurgeon's and yourself as well, is get yourself a little prayer group. And for me, I've got a few men who I'm friends with, and we've got a WhatsApp group, and we text in, all of us text in when there's a problem, and we are accountable to those people. And I think that really can be of a great support to me when I'm struggling with anything. So I encourage anyone, no matter what you're going through, just to get yourself a little support group.
Yeah.
And that's priceless.
Yeah, that's really good advice, I think, Phil. Actually, sometimes guys particularly are not so good on friendships. We kind of know people. We don't have real friends that we can share with. And it's so good to be able to encourage real friendships that we can go deeper with than talking about football or the weather, and share with and pray with as well.
And the stigma of man up is such an old phrase.
Yeah.
We hate it, and we don't want it to be used. It's been replaced with it's okay not to be okay. And being more vulnerable actually gives you so much more strength. Forget hiding behind this false manhood and thinking you can deal with your own problems. God's here for you. Your friends are here for you. We're here for you. And there are so many people that want to help. Don't man up. Man down.
Yes, absolutely.
Women are so much better than men. You're absolutely right.
Yeah. Yes.
Hate to admit it.
Yeah. Well, it's great to share with you, and I'm really glad that we had Patrick Regan speaking to us. Hey, do you know that bowl that he and his wife made? That's kind of an example of kintsugi art, and you have to smash it and then put it together with sort of a precious kind of metal
glue with
sort
gold
or something
stuff.
like that. And it shows out as something broken that's been healed. That's the idea of kintsugi. And if anyone would like to do a piece for us here at the church, that would be great.
Yes, we'd love to have a few.
Actually.
Yeah, we'd love to have a few. Maybe one in our garden, in our little bug hotel, a broken terracotta pot put together with hope.
I'm good at breaking things. Does that count?
Yeah. Your wife puts it all together, doesn't she? So maybe she can be the hope for you. But yeah, no, it'd be great. We've all got cracks. That's how light gets through, guys. We're all broken.
Absolutely.
An image of one of those pots in our church we would love. And even if you didn't want to bring it for our church, if you're watching from far away, make one and put it on your mantelpiece or your windowsill. If it breaks because your child pushes it, hey, you put it back together again. And what a reminder that we are all broken, and those cracks are something to be proud of.
Yeah, God can bring healing.
Yeah. God bless everyone.
Bless you.